Hello students, welcome to Legacy IS Academy. So continuing the series of landform development, in this video we are going to discuss about erosional landform that develop in the coastal areas due to the action of coastal waves, or also these are called as marine landforms because they are developing due to the action of sea water or the tidal water coming from the sea. So we are also going to detail going to discuss that how the action of sea waves creates such a huge diversity of landforms in the coastal region. So first of all, if we try to understand and briefly that what are the coastal landforms, so these can be simply referred as any of the relief feature which are present along any of the coastline of the world as a result of combination of processes, sediments as well as the geology of the coast itself. The process here refers to the action of seawater mainly. Sediments refer to the eroded material that is eroded from the coastal regions, from the continental region by the sea waves, and the geology means the rock structure and topography of the coastal areas. If we talk about the coastal environment of the world, we know that there is a huge diversity and a wide variety of landforms, and due to this wide variety of landforms existing in different coasts of the world, it is manifested in the spectrum of sizes and shape, which ranges from gently sloping beaches to the high cliff-like regions. Coastal landforms thus can be broadly categorized as erosional landforms as well as the depositional landforms. And in fact, if you look at the overall nature of any coast, does not matter which country, which content we are looking there, it can be described simply in terms of either erosional or in terms of depositional landform development. Now, the question comes that what are the factors that are mainly responsible for development of various different types of landform in the coastal areas? So, first of all, we can understand that as far as the erosional landform is concerned, four major factors or four major actions are there which causes development of the coastal landform. The most important of them being the sea waves, and due to the movement, due to the action of sea wave, four kind of processes we observe in the coastal region. The first such process is what we can call as abrasion. Abrasion has been taken from the word abrade, and abrade means the wearing down, the breaking down of the rocks or breaking down of the rock particles. So in this case, the sand that the wave is carrying wears away at the solid rock like a sandpaper, and gradually huge amount of sediment actually is created, which accumulates also in the lower part of the continental margin, which create the positional landform. Second action is what we can call as attrition. Attrition is nothing but the breaking down of the rock fragments into smaller chunks, into smaller sizes, when the different rock fragments, rock particles collide with each other when they move due to the action of seawater. That is what we can refer as attrition. Third and the most important process is what we can call as hydraulic action, that as we can clearly see, it is the action of the seawater. So this is also described as a classic wave action, whereby the force of the sea water itself, the force of the sea wave itself, when it smashes against the coastal rock structure, it breaks the rocks apart into various smaller fragments. And the last is what we can call as chemical process, which is referred as solution. And solution, what happens if the sea water is entering into such coast or moving towards such coast, which is made up of such material which is dissolvable in the water. For example, if we have limestone or we have chalk kind of topography in the coastal areas, these materials are easily dissolved in the water, and thus it leads to development of a solution led topography in the coastal regions. So overall, erosional landform in the coastal areas due to the action of sea wave can develop due to four actions: abrasion, attrition, hydraulic action, as well as the solution. Now, the sea wave is not the only factor that contributes in the development of coastal landforms. We also have the tides that contribute in development of these landforms. Tides in a simple term can be defined as a periodic rise and fall of seawater due to the gravitational action of sun and moon on the earth. And as there is a continuous rise and fall of seawater, we also see the movement of the seawater toward the coast and the backward movement away from the coast, and thus two major roles tide play as far as the coastal landform development is concerned. The first important role is that the tidal current, it can be flow current if it is moving toward the coast, or it can be termed as ebb current if it is moving away from the coast. So these tidal currents transport large quantity of sediment and at the same time can also erode the bedrock. That means the tidal currents not only causes erosion, it also causes deposition. For example, if this is your rock, suppose this is a hilly area, in the coastal regions. And due to the tidal movement, what happens when the flow current strike this hill, that causes erosion of the rock fragment from these hills. And later on, when the ebb current moves backward away from the coast toward the sea, these sediments are also carried by the seawater. The second role that the tide play is due to the rise and fall of the tide, the wave energy is distributed across the entire shore, across the entire coastal zone. And by changing the depth of water, and also the position of shoreline slightly changes. For example, if suppose earlier we have this kind of pattern of coastal area, example, this kind of coastal landform is there. Now, due to the action of tidal water, we can see the changes in the topography, changes in the shore line of the coastal region because of the different rates of erosion in different places. So thus sea waves and the tides play a very important role. Apart from that, three other minor factors we can also identify. The first one of them is climate, because climate largely controls two major parameters, the temperature and rainfall. So depending on the coastal region have which kind of climate, what is the temperature, what is the extent of rainfall, the rate of erosion is also controlled to a certain extent. Similarly, we talk about the other important factor is the movement of wind, because depending on what is the direction of wind movement, what is the speed of wind movement, it largely determines the speed of the sea waves as well. And obviously, if sea waves is moving at much higher speed, that means it is having much higher amount of energy. The rate of erosion will be quite higher as compared to when the sea wave is moving very slowly. And the last but not least is what we can say gravity, because it is a gravity that tries to push everything toward the surface of the earth. That means every erosion that is happening, every kind of erosion that is happening in the coastal areas, the materials are able to be washed down toward the sea due to the action of gravity. And thus it also helped to some extent in the development of coastal landforms. So overall, five major parameters we have discussed, five major factors we have discussed till now. The first one being the sea waves, second being the tides, and third being the climate, fourth being the movement in the direction of wind, and the fifth is the gravity itself. Now let us try to understand that what are the significant landforms that develop in the coastal region due to the action of erosion. So first of all, we have is what we can refer as bay, which is a very well-known term. If you look at even India, we can see that on the eastern coast of India, we have a bay, which is popular, well known as Bay of Bengal. So bay is nothing but an erosional landform that develops in the coastal region. And in simple words, it can be described as a small body of water that is recessed. That means it is moving in the downward, moving toward the backward side, backward recession we can say, from a large body of water such as an ocean. As we can see from this picture, it is very clear. This is your larger body of water that we can say sea or ocean, and from the sea and ocean we can say a recessed body is there that is moving toward the coast is what we can refer as the bay. In other terms, if you look at the geography of the bay, we can say it is surrounded by land on the three sides, with the fourth side connected to the larger body of water. If you look at the example of Bay of Bengal itself, again if I draw, this is the India, this is your Bay of Bengal, and on this side we have the Southeast Asia. Here we have Myanmar, Bangladesh, then you have Myanmar, then you have Malaysia, Thailand, and all this. So this is your Bay of Bengal, and as you can see, this water body is surrounded by land from 1, 2, and 3 sides. And from one side, we can see it is open or connected to a larger body of water, which for the Bay of Bengal is nothing but Indian Ocean. So that is how bay looks like geographically. Bay development happens when surrounding soft rocks such as sand and clay is eroded. This is something we can also refer as the formation of bay happens due to something which we can call as differential rate of erosion. Now, what is differential rate of erosion? We know that the coastal areas can be made up of different types of rocks, and all different types of rock can be categorized either as a hard rock or the soft rock. So obviously, if the rocks are harder, they will be eroded to a lesser extent by the sea waves. On the other hand, if there is also soft rock, they will be eroded at a much faster rate. And that is why what happens, since soft rock erodes easier and more quickly than the hard rock, for example, chalk is a soft rock, this will cause sections of the land to jut out in the larger body of water, and this is also we can refer as a headland. For example, if you look at this picture itself, we can see that this part of the landmass is jutting out, is extending outward toward the sea. Why this is jutting outward toward the sea? Because this part of landmass has not been eroded to such extent as this part of landmass, because this can be made up of harder rock, While here earlier, whatever landmass were present here were made up of soft rocks. And that is why from this side also we can say this landmass is jutting outward toward the sea, because this is made up of hard rocks. So we have alternate bands of hard rock. Here there was soft rock, here we have hard rock, and soft rock has been eroded to a much larger extent, and that is why we can see a recession like area has developed it into headlands. So we have bays and headlands you will find side by side in many areas. For example, the best example of bay where we have, which is also known for its highest tidal range in the world, is Bay of Fundy in Nova Scotia region of the Canada. So here we can say this is a Bay of Fundy. It is surrounded by the land from three sides, as we have discussed in the definition, and from one side it is open to a larger water body, which in this case is the Atlantic Ocean. And thus we can say this is the example of headland that is jutting outward the Atlantic Ocean, because this is made up of harder rocks. And Bay of Fundy, before the formation of Bay of Fundy, if you imagine, here must be some sort of softer rocks, and the wave has eroded it, causing a recession-like feature to develop here. And that is why we have formation of bay. So I hope you understood about the concept of bay formation. Now moving forward, next landform that we already have discussed is what we refer as headland. Headlands, as we have discussed right now, are often found near or surrounding the bay areas. Headland in simple term can be defined usually as a high point of land with a sheer drop to the body of water, and thus they are generally characterized by high breaking waves, intense erosion, rocky shores, as well as the steep sea cliffs. So it is because it is made up of much more harder resistant rocks. It is not eroded in the same way how these regions have been eroded. The third important landform that we see very similar to bay is what is referred as cove. So cove is nothing but a type of bay. The only difference between bay and cove is cove as compared to bay is much more smaller, have generally circular to oval shape, and has a very narrow kind of entrance. The process of development of cove is same as that of bay, and that we have discussed is the differential rate of erosion of the harder rocks as compared to the softer rocks. And this is a very good picture of the cove. You can see this very narrow area which is surrounded by land from all the three sides. This is your headland. This is the headland 1. This we can say at headland 2. And this small cove is connected to a larger water body which can be sea or ocean. The third important landform we see in the coastal areas is what is referred as sea cliffs. Sea cliffs are also considered to be the most widespread coastal landforms across the world. In simple terms, sea cliffs are nothing but a very steep to vertical bedrock and range from few meters in the height to hundreds of meters of height above the sea level. The reason why these sea cliffs is vertical in nature because of the wave induced erosion near the sea level that has caused the subsequent collapse of the rocks at a higher elevation. Also, we can say the cliffs that extend to the shoreline commonly have a notch cut into them where waves have battered the bedrock surface. And as you can see, this is how our general cliffs look like. You can see this is a highly steep kind of slope from the sea level, and it is kind of vertical kind of structure you can see. So how sea cliffs develop? The development of sea cliff is very simple. For example, if suppose this is the rock structure here, and then the rock is gradually descending toward the sea, and here you have the sea water. This is suppose the sea level. Now we know that during the high tide, what happens near the coastal areas, the height of water increases. And as the height of water increases, the tidal water then splashes around and then strike with force on this mountain structure or this tall structure. Now gradually what will happen due to continuous striking of the surface by the seawater, a small notch like we can say structure will develop here, and this notch will gradually be eroded more and more in the inward direction, and after some time we can say that what will happen, we have this kind of a structure that can develop where there will be upstanding block of this rock which is supported by a narrow block of rock, and here you have the sea water. Now gradually as this notch is recessing more and more in the backward direction, is eroded more and more in the backward direction due to continuous plunging of the seawater, continuous strike of the seawater, a time will come when this upper part of the wall cannot be supported anymore, its weight cannot be supported anymore, and this upper part of wall will simply fall down, will simply disintegrate, and thus in the last you'll have this kind of landform that will develop, and where we'll have the disintegrated wall of rock that has fallen down. So that is how you can see development of steep vertical walled cliff that develops or tend to develop in the coastal areas. The best example and the well-known example of sea cliff is in the Strait of Dover. It is made up of chalk topography, as we can see due to the white kind of this rock structure we have, and we can see due to the continuous erosion by the waves, we have a vertical, steep-sided wall-like structure that has developed, and you can understand that in past and even now, what is happening? There is a continuous erosion that keeps on happening, and that is why this cliff is continuously receding in the backward direction. For example, here we can see a kind of depressed area has formed here, a kind of inward looking area, inward recessed area has formed here. But earlier, if you come back, hundreds of years ago, there must be some sort of landform here as well. But now this has broken down and has fallen down and disintegrated. Now, related to sea cliff, we have a platform that is called as wave cut platform, which is also considered as an erosional coastal landform. The cut platform is a flat area in the front of a cliff. Such a platform is created by, as the name suggests, waves that cut. Cut means erosion. So, waves that cut or erode away from the cliff, leaving behind a platform. The bottom of a cliff often erodes most quickly because we have discussed that if suppose this is a cliff and this is how the sea surface is, or suppose this is your sea level. So obviously, since sea waves are continuously striking the bottom part of the cliff, the rate of erosion will be quite higher here, resulting into what we call formation of wave cut notch. If a wave cut notch become too large, it can result into cliff collapse, as we have discussed. So let us try to understand that how wave cut platform developed due to continuous backward recession of a cliff-like feature. So if you look at this particular diagram, it becomes very clear. The original position of cliff was somewhere, as we can see here. Now due to continuous action of the sea wave, especially as we have discussed during the time of high tide, the base of cliff seems to be attacked by the sea water, and thus a hydraulic action occurs, and thus we have development of a wave cut notch. Now gradually, as we have discussed, wave cut notch will recess, and this part of cliff will not be supported anymore and will fall down. And thus when this part of the landform, this part of cliff falls down, here we can see a platform like a structure develops because the cliff is continuously receding in the backward direction, leaving behind the bedrock in a flat form, in a flat shape, and gradually the sea water will enter and reach over this platform and will try to move more and more toward the direction in which cliff is receding. So that is how we have development of the sea cliffs as well as the wave cut platform. The next important landform which we see developing in the coastal region is what we can call as caves. Caves can generally form in headlands. So generally what happens when the waves strike the headland rocks, they can cause cracks to form in the areas where the rock is weaker. And as the cracks develop in the rock, what happens? There is a hydraulic action because continuously in the small cracks water is entering, and as water is entering in the cracks and suddenly it as it try to expand, it makes the cracks much more bigger and larger. So as the cracks become more bigger and larger due to further hydraulic action, erosion also progresses, and thus overall enlargement of this crack-like structure, crevices-like structure we see, which over a long period of time lead to development of a cave-like structure. So what generally happens, suppose that once a cave-like structure has developed into the headland or the cave or the steep rocks of the cliff rocks, another spectacular type of erosion landform which we call as sea arc, because as we can see from this particular picture, this is your sea arc. So why we are calling it sea arc? Clear from the picture itself, it is having a arc kind of shape and having kind of small inlet between the rock. So basically what happens, due to the differential rate of erosion, as we know that harder rocks are eroded at a slower rate, the softer rocks are eroded at a faster rate, due to which what happens, the rate of erosion is very different, and thus when a cave is forming in a narrow headland, and if erosion of the cave continues in the same direction in which waves are moving, finally, it can cause the complete collapse of the backward wall of the cave, and thus a complete opening like a structure will develop with only a bridge like a structure of the rocks that will be on the top of this cave. Now, obviously, if the rocks are eroded here, the rocks are being eroded here, gradually what will happen? These area will become more and more narrow in nature, and as this rock structure become narrow in nature, now they can no longer be supported. This the upper rock that is basically supported by these two structures, they cannot be supported anymore, and this will lead to disintegration of this upper wall. And suppose if the upper wall is disintegrated, then what will happen? This kind of structure will develop, which is called as a rock stack. This leaves a tall rock stack. Again, to revise, simply what is happening in the first stage? Suppose this is your cliff wall and the sea wave is continuously striking here. So in the beginning, due to the hydraulic action, we'll have development of a large crack. Now, due to continuous erosion, we have discussed large crack will become larger and larger, bigger and bigger in sizes. That will lead to development of a cave-like structure. Once a cave-like structure has developed, due to continuous erosion and the backward movement of the seawater, the cave will become much more larger and bigger in size. And finally, the backward part of the cave wall will be also broken due to erosion, and thus the headland will form a natural arc with a complete opening through which water can flow through. And thus, when this kind of a structure develop, gradually this part will become narrower and narrower, and the upper rock cannot be supported anymore. That will cause complete disintegration of this arc and formation of a pillar like a structure, which we can call as a stack. Now obviously, if suppose this pillar also is being eroded continuously over a long period of time by the sea wave, what will happen? The overall height of these pillars will keep on decreasing, and then the stack is finally eroded to form a very smaller kind of rock structure, which is referred as stump, whose height is very, very less if you measure it from the sea level. So the formation of sea cave, formation of sea arc, formation of sea stack, and as well as the formation of sea stumps all happen in a gradual manner as the time passes. So if you look at actual picture, the most important or most famous, we can say, sea stacks are found in Victoria region of Australia, which are called as 12 apostles, because 12 such sea stacks you can find here. And you can see this is the picture taken from the other frame, and you can see these are the rock stacks because they are much more higher in elevation. And here and there, this, if you look at this particular rock, if you look at this particular rock, this particular rock, they're having very low elevation from the sea level, and that is why they're called as stump. And here you can see this is your sea arc. So this is a sea arc, this is, we can say, is sea stack, and these are small stumps. And here we can see small cracks and crevices still are developing, that might lead to development of the another round of sea cave. So these are all the major important landforms, erosional landform that develop in coastal areas, which we have to be aware about. I hope you like the video, understood what we are trying to explain. If you like the video, please hit the like button, share it with your fellow aspirants, as well as subscribe to our channel for more such helpful content. Thank you very much.